Stop whatever you're doing because this didn't happen quietly. It happened deliberately. While households were distracted, Downing Street triggered one of the most explosive housing decisions Britain has seen in years. A policy framed as cost-cutting has instead ignited fury, protests, and a national argument about fairness, priorities, and who truly comes first. Tonight we're breaking down 7 hard facts behind Labour's plan to move up to 100,000 illegal migrants into council housing, why it landed like a political grenade, and how it has pushed communities to the edge. This isn't opinion, this is what's unfolding, piece by piece, in real time. Let's start where the trouble actually began. The first warning sign wasn't the policy itself, it was how it was released. This announcement was not delivered with transparency or public consultation. It landed during the New Year period, when attention was fragmented, Parliament was quiet, and scrutiny was minimal. The government revealed its intention to move tens of thousands of asylum seekers out of hotels and directly into council homes, framing the decision as an emergency fix to spiralling accommodation costs. But timing matters in politics, and this timing spoke volumes. By choosing a moment when families were focused elsewhere, ministers avoided immediate challenge, avoided debate, and avoided answering uncomfortable questions. Critics argue this wasn't a coincidence, but a calculation. Housing is not an abstract policy area. It affects stability, safety, and family security. Announcing such a shift without warning set the tone for everything that followed. And once people noticed, the reaction was instant. Because the moment the public clocked what this meant, one brutal statistic took centre stage. At the heart of the outrage is a number the government cannot explain away. 1.33 million people currently sit on social housing waiting lists. That figure represents the highest level in over a decade, and it includes workers, carers, pensioners, veterans, and families who have waited years without progress. For these households, council housing isn't a convenience. It's the difference between stability and breakdown. Many are trapped paying unsustainable rent, living with relatives, or stuck in temporary accommodation with no end in sight. Against that backdrop, the announcement that newly built or refurbished council homes could be allocated to illegal migrants felt like a direct insult. The issue isn't compassion, it's a sequence. People already in the system feel leapfrogged. They feel invisible, and when housing becomes a competition rather than a safety net, resentment becomes inevitable. Yet ministers insist this isn't about generosity. They say it's about saving money. The government claims this policy will reduce spending by ending the use of asylum hotels. But the figures complicate that claim. Labour has committed £100 million in initial funding to support local authorities building or refurbishing housing stock specifically for this purpose. That money covers construction, refurbishment, management, and associated support services. Critics point out that these costs are front-loaded and permanent, unlike hotels, which are temporary and flexible. Local councils, already struggling with budgets, are now expected to absorb long-term responsibility. Meanwhile, millions of households face rising rent, shrinking disposable income, and council tax increases. To them, the idea of saving money by building homes others cannot access rings hollow. The policy shifts costs, it doesn't remove them, it simply decides who benefits first. And that decision becomes even more contentious when you look at where these homes are going. The pilot schemes are concentrated in specific councils, including Brighton, Hackney, Peterborough and Thanet. These are not areas with surplus housing or spare public services. They are already managing pressure on schools, healthcare, transport and policing. Residents say they were informed late or not at all. Local leaders signed up quickly, encouraged by funding incentives, while communities were left reacting after decisions were finalised. This lack of consultation frustration fueled anger, not because people opposed solutions, but because they were excluded from them. Placing large numbers of people into concentrated residential zones without preparation creates strain. When services buckle, tensions rise, and when people feel ignored by decision-makers, trust evaporates fast. Which explains why frustration didn't stay online for long. What began as digital outrage quickly spilled into the streets. Social media amplified voices that felt unheard, and protests followed across multiple towns and cities. Demonstrators weren't fringe figures, they were families, workers, parents, and pensioners demanding answers. Chants weren't abstract, they were direct. Calls to house locals first, demands for fairness, questions about priorities. For many, this was the moment patience snapped. Years of waiting collided with a policy that appeared to bypass them entirely. Authorities struggled to control gatherings as emotions ran high. Whether peaceful or chaotic, the message was consistent. People felt betrayed. When housing becomes symbolic of national priorities, reactions stop being polite. And beneath the anger lies a deeper fear politicians refuse to address. Crime and safety concerns have become inseparable from this debate. Official data shows foreign nationals are overrepresented in certain offence categories, yet background verification for arrivals remains limited. Critics argue this creates unnecessary risk, particularly when housing is placed near schools and family areas. Government insists safeguards exist, but communities point to patterns rather than promises. When incidents occur, even if rare, they reinforce fear rather than reassurance. Critics warn that without rigorous identity checks, public confidence will continue to erode. This isn't about demonizing individuals, it's about accountability. People want to know who is being placed in their neighborhoods and why that information isn't transparent. Which brings us to the question driving the entire backlash. Ultimately, this controversy boils down to trust. Who is the system designed to serve, and in what order? Labour argues the policy is pragmatic and humane. Opponents see a government prioritising optics over its obligation to its own citizens. When legality, contribution, and patience appear secondary to arrival timing, people conclude the rules no longer apply equally. That perception is corrosive. Once fairness is questioned, compliance collapses. Housing is more than bricks and mortar. It represents belonging, security, and recognition. When citizens feel those values are diluted, anger becomes political fuel, and that fuel is burning hot. This story isn't finished, it's unfolding, and whether you support this policy or oppose it, one thing is clear: people deserve honesty, transparency, and a voice in decisions that shape their lives. Share this video before it's buried, comment with your view respectfully, clearly, and loudly, and subscribe to Britain Voice, because we don't whisper about stories that shake the country, we break them.